Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's episode. Sight doesn't belong to the human idea. This is, at most, an incredibly odd statement. There was a time during Copernicus's time, during Galileo's time, where the Inquisition, in some sense, the Church, perceived that humanity was the center of the universe. And due to religious ideology, this world was also made for man by the Creator. So man felt the greatest ego boost, believe it or not. And we realized that we are not the center of our world. And so this episode, I'm looking into how much are we still subjectively perceiving ourselves as the center of the world. That means in how many areas after Galileo and the works of, who was it? I think it was Copernicus who discovered the Earth. Sorry guys, let me just double check this. I think Galileo noticed the sun, Earth spinning around the sun. Copernicus noticed it kind of being round. Alright guys, hang on, let me just check this real quick. Yeah, Copernicus proposed the heliocentric. Yeah, I think I was getting that wrong. Okay. Alright guys, it says, this is what Galileo discovered. He discovered the phases of Venus and sunspots, thereby confirming that the sun rotates and that the planets orbit around the sun, not around the Earth. So pretty much guys, the contributions of the fathers of science was to take us from abstract accuracy to direct accuracy, indirect accuracy to direct accuracy. Now to steer this towards more of the talk, Pretty much, guys. I'm saying we realized we were we realized we're orbiting around the sun, and I'm saying that in our inner realm we are not orbiting around the sun. Everything is orbiting around the self and the human construct, the human idea. And that's the thing, that if our language can't contain an experience, we can't communicate it. So I'm kind of thinking that can an idea experience? The word experience, how much of that is a known phenomenon? There has been times where, I mean, of course, like, you drink a glass of water, you experience drinking a glass of water, but to wonder about the unknownness of the moment. Alright, guys, I think I just need to explain a sequence of things, and it will kind of clear up the inner realm vision I have. Pretty much, let's say there was an unconscious world. A lot of time passed. There emerged an unconscious self. A lot of time passed. There emerged a conscious self from the unconscious self, and then from the conscious self, this is where we are now, and we're going to the point where we're going towards the conscious world, let's say. So what does that mean? That means there was a point where language didn't exist, civilization didn't exist. It was just dwelling phenomena. So all of this came after certain point of unique decision making, or nature made the decision for us, or we made the decision for ourselves. But I'm just saying, like, there was a point where there was no language, and I feel just us claiming to be the center of our world is similar to us thinking that our language that we made on this pebble in the middle of nowhere, can contain the validity of all phenomenology. We are living inside a world, and if you really must know, inside another world. So what I'm implying is that we have no clue, and our language is hollow. And it's not hollow to us who are the creators of the language, but it is hollow to the other. So if language is hollow, and the only way we have come to comprehend infinity is conceptual, then in some sense there's hollow infinities everywhere. So that's the thing. I feel I've spoken about it as it's going to be an apocalypse that the educational system all around the world is going to experience. Let me explain to you what that apocalypse is. It's an apocalypse of this resolution, this exact idea I'm telling you, that we're going to realize our language is meaningful only when we look at it in a certain way. It's as if on some level these words are like ink on a piece of paper. How many ways can sound move in silence? How many ways can the pen draw on the paper, on a piece of paper? So what that means is, I think right now we're in a phase of reality where things are manifest, and things can be administered individually and consciously. But if our consciousness changes, that can suggest the individual experience changing as well. You know, when I look at animals, a part of me is like, what are these creatures slow? And speed, evolutionary wise, potentially, you know. But it's just that life, like especially other species, it seems like they don't have language for processing. It seems, I mean, they have communication, they have sounds, but you don't see like a group of wolves, coming together in a corner and howling, and all each of them acknowledging that this howl means that and that howl means that. It's instinctual. It's as if like our languages are in our design, you know. And so that's my kind of, that was a just, it's like a chaotic thought. I mean, it's not really it's really one of those thoughts that the unknown brings to you. Think of it this way: think of every moment of experience to be a door. Every moment you're consciously breathing, door, door, door. Imagine there are just doorways. Okay. Imagine just like how Lao Tzu spoke about the way, Mr. Within is speaking about the doorway. Can you imagine Lao Tzu was just telling people the way is that way, and people were like, "Yo, the way, the way." Guys, this idea is precious. The idea that language is gonna explode into the meaningless again. Here's my vision. Here's my view. I opened my eyes, and they call this ethnocentrism. Pretty much how you are the program of whatever environment you've been exposed to. You know, it's like your background. For example, a lot of atheists in combating in you know, like Mortal Kombat with theists. They say that you could have been born anywhere on the planet, and you would have had the programming of that part of the environment. That means that person who believes in God, for example, the atheist is like, yo man, you could have been born in that country and believed in another God. You don't believe all the other gods, you know. You only believe your own God. And so, for example, there's this. I honestly am seeing like that, like, guys, you don't know, I've seen Christopher Hitchens debates on YouTube, and it's literally like after that video game Mortal Kombat, there was like fatality. The guy would do like a KO move. So we have Fu Great, Mr. Great say, I'm a lighthouse on an island in the ocean. Where does the ocean begin or end, and who sails on it? That's the thing. That question is, you say, where does the ocean begin or end? What you say, I'm. That's an interesting comment, you know. Really, where is the beginning and end of ourself? The beginning, you don't see it. It's like you miss that. It's just like you're getting popcorn and you're late to the film, and the film started. You're missing the first 10 minutes of the film. It's like you're missing the first bit of emerging in existence. And so the cool thing is, you don't even watch it till after the credits. You leave the theater before the credits, and really, I wonder how the psychology would behave if it kind of felt it was in one cinema room. You see, guys, it's we're not just objects, okay? And the fact that we've been going along just thinking that we're objects has been miraculous, you know. So just like we're not the center of our world, there could be a huge chance that that where our identity and inner realms begin is not the center of the world. What does that mean? That means there is two. I mean, in life, based on how many ways you cut up something, what does that mean? That means I'm looking at this tree in front of me, for example. If I was to kind of like try to comprehend this tree, I would, on some level, my mind would try to make it more complex. I would divide, I would try to zoom in on every part of the tree and see a world there. But if it's, or the mind would could zoom out, you know? Before I was a subject to myself, my eyes had no owner, conceptually. Just the fact that there is a pre-thought stage means the world is not limited to thoughts. It means no longer ideas can dictate man. The human experience has matured into a awareness of objective phenomena, while there being a sort of intermediary between the unknown as a subject. So your mind is a bridge between your body and your known body and your unknown soul. And so the way I've kind of experienced it, because for me, when I come to give these talks, there's this one ultimate question. There's this one ultimate question that for me, as long as I'm alive, it's going to inspire me to give these talks, and it is to discover not just an objective evolution, but it's kind of, how can I tell you? It's like, imagine who you would be if your mind was the sky. What if this human existence is 0.03% of the totality of who you are? I'm being playful with the number, but I'm saying, what if this is not just what we are, what we see? What if our sight is left to the processing of the senses? Right now, I'm experiencing the senses. I'm seeing the tree, I'm seeing, I'm hearing nature, I'm feeling the breeze, various senses intact. Now, it's not that just I am receiving the senses, it's that the senses are being received, and then there is the stare back to where the senses came from. There's something called Plato's Allegory of the Cave. I don't know how many people are aware of this, but Plato set forth this idea, if I remember correctly, a bunch of people, they're kind of start. He was kind of wondering. Imagine a bunch of people who started in a cave and they could only see their shadows. They could not see their face, and they could not see the face of anyone else, but they could see their shadows, for example, on the wall. Imagine they were tied in the cave or something. So what does that mean? They could see their shadows, but they could not see their own face. And Plato was suggesting how that when the person steps out of that cave, they will be introduced to another reality. And so it's not just about laws of computation. It's not just that mathematics alone can penetrate the mysteries of the cosmos. Because for me, the two basic pillars of science are mathematics and geometry. And any human being who comprehends this comprehends what kind of tools or what sort of language our species has kind of made. These are all advanced technologies. The best way a technology can be used is as a language. What does that mean? That means I am personally a bilingual person, you know. That means I can speak different languages, and sometimes when I come to even give these talks, I'm pretty sure the audience notices. Sometimes it's like two words come into my mind. It's as if like sometimes it's like an infusion of a cultural image. For example, I think of the word, let's say, apple seed. Okay, I think of that word. Now, the image of the apple, when I hear apple seed, imagine I don't see one image. I see an apple, and I see a separate memory of in my childhood where I held an apple, and in my childhood when I saw a seed. Okay. Now, when I say apple seed, for example, when I said that word right now, behind in my inner realms there was an evocation of the word apple coming from a time where I was in Iran, when I was a kid and my grandpa passed me the small apple, you know. And then the seed is coming for example from where was it? It was an image of somewhere when I was in Canada and I was seeing someone use seeds. So I'm telling you, it was as if one word brought forth, evoked different dimensions. And right now we are so obsessed and constantly trying to paint the world into a pretty box that we can all feel as if we know what this world is. The most immediate thing you should realize, it's unknown, and it's unknown to such an immense depth that this is why only compassion makes sense, because it's too unknown, because you never know what worlds dwell behind the eyes of people, you know, walking every day. It's fascinating for me. It's like, yeah, there was a time when I would just see a person, I would be like, yeah, bunch of cells, bunch of biological cells. Yeah, they're just a biological being. But then I realized, no, there is something allowing the biology to observe itself, to decide for itself. There is a sort of feedback loop behind our eyes, and I don't know what this is, but maybe we don't have the language to explain it in 2020. What if one day, what if one day there was a mirror in front of you and Thor's hammer accidentally dropped from the clouds and fell on that mirror? What if the body is living one life, but the mind is living multiple? And when we close our eyes, we are a field of intelligence. When we open our eyes, we have no other choice than being the individualism that moves. Guys, P. Turtle shares an interesting comment. Language is software programming used to modify the operating system's output. That means this is an incredible thing, guys. Imagine getting a piece of paper and writing down everything you desire, and then wondering how much of it is an image behind your eyes, how much of it is a concept. Sight doesn't just belong to the human idea, because there was sight before there was the human idea. And it's not about ownership. It's fascinating, you know. It's like you go towards ancient wisdom, they're like oneness beyond this world, and you go you go to modernity and they're like emptiness before this world, you know. Oh man. Guys, language is not just language, by the way. Language, words harbor images. Words harbor images. And in regards to human communication, when you think through images, and then you use words, it becomes different. It becomes as if there is something moving behind your eyes. Have you ever seen someone think? I mean, guys, this is a cool thing for people to try. You know, film yourself thinking about something, or just trying to solve something, or trying to remember. It's like sometimes when a human being processes something, if you notice, their eyes move different directions. Okay, their eyes move different directions. That means you ask the guy about their childhood, suddenly they're looking at the ground, trying to remember their childhood with their fingers on their chin, right? So what it means is, behind our eyes, it's like, imagine first self evoke, second self evoke, third self evoke, fourth self. It's like endless self tunneling, this experiential tunneling through senses of self as a response to the environment. I'm simply saying, what do we do as a civilization if we suddenly go towards an evolutionary pathway where we're no longer a concept? That means we are left two choices as a species. Either we create a new language from a sort of more aware state, you know. That means right now our language is two-dimensional, but we're three-dimensional beings. We attempt to build, for example, a fourth-dimensional language. You know, that's just an example. Guys, let me tell you something about silence. I just saw a comment from Omi in the chat section. Silence is not an option. Tried for 3 months. Let me tell you guys, silence is go towards silence when you need to consult the world soul. That's a poetic way of saying it. We are not designed to be inside a photo. And if our happiness, if our success is just a photo, like if your desire is just an image of yourself, do you know how many images you go through in this life? You know? And believe it or not, what's even more fascinating, that I will tell you, I have never gotten any of my desires. Because the moment I got what I desired, I did not have the eyes of the previous self that desired it. So the concept of desire in a dynamic, entropic universe where everything is changing, what can we desire? What can we desire? We're just the eyes of the void watching the world crumble and resurrect endlessly. I'm going to tell you a chapter from this science fiction work of mine. I'm just going to storm through it, so there's a lot of things people might not understand about it, but I'm going to attempt sharing it. Maybe some people hear it. I wrote this science fiction book called Farda. Farda is this chosen child that is divine, and I kind of thought about a sort of experience out of my youth I had. And this child is in this sci-fi universe I've created, and some people who are usually listen to my talks, I've spoken about this giant sci-fi novel I'm working on called The Messenger of Giants. But this book is 2 books before that. This is the first book of the trilogy, and it's called Farda. And Farda in the Farsi Iranian language means tomorrow. And so I had evoked this sci-fi universe where it was as if the head of an eagle and the god of the mythology of, I had created a mythology for that sci-fi universe. The god of it, I had called it Farian. And Farian was this giant eagle, half kind of, I don't know, humanoid, I don't know what I wrote, but it was something like that. And Farian was this god that every feather of this kind of like eagle god was in some sense a universe. And Farda is this kid which has been called forth by Farian. And he's this little kid who everything in the cosmos is just assisting him to just reach Farian. And so I'm going to tell you a chapter. So there's this kid, and he has this kind of like soccer ball size cylindrical robot orb following him on his right shoulder. So what is this situation, guys? I want you to imagine this dark forest, this really dark forest, and I want you to imagine that there's this little kid walking, being escorted by this robot's cylinder that talks to the kid and whatnot as a companion. And so it's just this kid, and this is Farda, the name of the kid. And what happens is that Farda goes into this forest, into this dark forest, and there's this girl that's same size as him, and she's just standing there. But this is kind of where I got a bit chaotic with my science fiction, where she was kind of like, she kind of looks demonic and whatnot, okay? Anyways, Farda is there with this kind of like sphere, cylindrical sphere, not cylindrical, it's a sphere robot thing. And this demon girl appears, and right behind her, a giant version of her, a demon giant, the same but bigger version than her, steps out from behind the tree, as if the tree was, you couldn't see it, as if there was nobody behind the tree, but suddenly this giant demonic reflection of the girl stands up, appears. Now, this was the coolest scene. I was so proud of this when I wrote it, guys. This was the scene where suddenly in that moment, you see the girl say some things, and Farda just gets scared. The little kid gets scared and just kneels down and covers his eyes. And then you see that giant demon thing run towards, what do you call it? Farda. And that sphere turns into this giant robot, and I thought never in any sort of narrative that demons and robots were fighting, We've had, for example, technology used against, for example, I don't know, in scary movies against demons or whatever. But like, this was a scene where I saw this giant like robot and this giant demonic thing fighting in this dark forest, and the only thing lighting it up is like a moonlight. Imagine. So in that scene, that sphere turns into a giant robot, and as that collision is happening, Farda is there and he's experiencing his interrupts. Eventually, Farda does return to Ferian, but there's a longer story. There's a second book which is called what did I call it? Lord Mistos, the Geometrical Messenger, something like that. And I'll tell you guys, this one scene is important. This is an important character in my whole science fiction. Sorry guys, it's not available now, but I'm working on it. You can say it's the sculpture's in progress, you know. So guys, I'm gonna tell you one more character in this kind of sci-fi universe. There is a character named Lord Mistos, and I don't know why. I think it was just like my mind playfully infused the two ideas. Like I was raised in Iran till the age of 7, you know, and there was the religious ideology around me, and so in religious ideology, you're introduced to the idea of angels and archangels, and in the Judaic Abrahamic religions. And so I don't know why, but for me, there was something that I saw geometry as divine, and then in divinity, you had the concept of archangels, and it was like suddenly I wondered an archangel of geometry. And so that's Farian's messenger, that bird god's kind of, what do you call it? What do you call it? Farian, the bird god. Sorry guys, I lost my train of thought. Oh yeah, Lord Mistos. So there are scenes where Farda, the whole book, the whole 2 books before Messenger of Giants, you see Farda walking and going through various events, right? And there are scenes where he's about to die, where all of time stops, and suddenly, imagine like a simulation, as if the whole moment is a simulation. The geometrical lines appear, and Lord Mistos arrives, and he has a private conversation. And so he's this archangel that whenever he arrives, it's not light like an angel, it's geometrical kind of oscillations in the environment. Everything becomes geometric when this being comes around, you know? And I don't know, guys, ideas like this, you know, for me, it's like there is no good and bad in my sci-fi novel. That is so archaic. Yeah, it's as if there is chaos and order, and the various ways that chaos branches out, and the various way order branches out, and there's a sort of honor towards both sides. You know. Guys, I'll tell you something that when you hear this, you are never going to be interested. Not never, but you're not going to be interested with the imagery behind the veil of the sensory perception. If you're a theosophist, you're not going to be interested anymore. Let me tell you why. There's this saying in the Bhagavad Gita where they say the person, if they choose to worship a divine a deity or a divine agency, let's say you worship Thor, let's say you worship Poseidon, I don't know, you worship Varian, whatever. See, guys, these are steps to make the book come alive. What would you do if you were a general on a battlefield and you saw a soldier with a shaking hand holding a sword and the soldier can't hold the sword straight out of fear? You know, the idea of following a deity in the Bhagavad Gita, just to complete that thought, is that that deity would administer you in your afterlife. So whatever form you consider to be absolute, it's kind of like you absolutely see it after you die. You know. A good question would be, if sight doesn't belong to the human idea, then why is the human idea here? And if we take an ethnocentric approach, thinking we are human before we are nature, we ignore nature. But if we feel we are nature, then we feel we are human, then it's as if we haven't forgotten where the mind began. Right now, I don't feel like an artificial robot. Why? Because it's like there's a naturalness to being temporary, as if it's like being immortal in nature is strange. It's like life is this endless stage where different actors are coming and performing and doing their work and leaving. It's as if there is an invisible construction project. Because really, guys, I've thought about the implication of being on a rock in the middle of nowhere. We are left in either two options. We stay on the earth, we don't go beyond it, or we go beyond it. Now, in order to go beyond it, we have to go beyond the many ways that the systems of the world are currently held. The moments come and go. The leaves are shaken by the wind, and time blows the final candle cake. Sorry, uh, the final candle flame. I got poetically hungry there. Sorry. This is, I think, where uh, the value of true experience comes in, where you don't ignore what you are, and you don't ignore what you are not. And you allow the sight to not be limited by thought, as if the thoughts could never touch the viewer. It's like, can what you watch on TV, if you watch a zombie TV movie, can that zombie step out of your TV? No. And it's kind of like thoughts could never touch what was here and witnessing beyond them. When I look at that bird building a nest on a tree, it's kind of like, why? Why nature? Why create a design? Why create a design that just builds a nest on a tree, for example? And then I realized, if you ask the bird's gonna be like, "You kidding me, bro? This is my life." So what does that mean? That means to man's perception, it seems meaningless when we're building skyscrapers. But our skyscrapers could be bird nests to higher dimensions. And that's the fascinating thing, that we have to aim to communicate with the only world that we have access to, in a grounded way. That means when you open your eyes and just look at something around the room, just wherever you are, just look at something and just realize, like, that's like free imagination. You didn't have to imagine. Physical existence is like imagery that's there. It's imagination that's already there. So when you look at imagination, the only way we realize it, because there's reality, then there is something else, and that something else we call an imagination. But that imagination is not the best word. I consider these archaic terms. They're becoming old school, too old. It's just even the word mind after a point where, like, what is this? We're gonna let letters, define experience. Guys, the question is, how could experience ever be a thought? I feel anarchy has two forms. A simple expression and a complex expression, let's say. And complex anarchy is overt destruction, but we can say simple anarchy is disregard. Okay, guys, Christian Pearson says an interesting question. Are thoughts not a part of the experience? You see, on some level, I could tell you that the thought is part of the experience, but is not the whole experience, is a content of the whole mind that's being the awareness to the moment. I'll tell you the story from Kabir. Kabir was this Indian yogi, and he witnessed this crime happen, and they took him to court, but he was like this kind of sage. He was like this yogi, kind of like a spiritual nomad. And what happened is the judge shouts at him. He's like, "Yo, man, tell me who hit them first. Tell me what you saw. Tell me what you saw. Who hit first or whatever." And Kabir says, "I can't." And the judge is like, "Whoa!" And all the people are like, "Whoa! What do you mean you can't?" You know? And Kabir says, "What the eye see, the tongue cannot speak." That means what we communicate through language as thought, let's say language is the skin of thought. So what we communicate as thought is not the communicator. It's literally like you writing a sentence on a piece of paper and thinking you are just that sentence. How intense would that be? Thinking your language. I don't know how I did it. After when I noticed it, when I noticed beyond the language threshold, it was a moment where I realized language was the deception. What does that mean? That means you're kind of given language when you're young. You make decisions, you set certain things in motion, and then you end up thinking that the whole lifetime is a cycle of endless pursuit of a better character in a story. It's not that it's not a pursuit of that, but it's just that uh, language is a dualistic technology. Advaita, yoga, mysticism, this is all taking you to non-duality. Do you see? Do you see? We are realizing ourselves as non-dual experiencers of a dual world, of this constant game of the emergence of self and emergence of the world. It's pretty much this eternal chess game of self moving first and then world moving. Self moving, world moving. Self moving, world moving. So how do you so Mr. Great in the chat section, how are you defining source? Is source a concept? Can a con are you or by source do you mean the unknown? Because I'm not telling people that this this phenomena has an answer. It's a living dynamic system. The greatest answer to it is that you got to ride the waves like a surfer. Anybody who can hold a subject in their hand, hold it in your hand and take a selfie and send me. I'll see. You'll see a subject is not physical, and we are the main subject of our lives. And in this episode, I'm trying to say, what if the main subject of our lives isn't the main subject of all phenomena of the inner realms? You know, what if all that spirituality could be a long stare at the unknown and an instant recognition of where you stand. This life is kind of like it's kind of like waves. I feel that's honestly a good analogy where it's as if when you sleep, it's like there's no waves, and when you suddenly wake up in the morning, it's like there's waves. There's waves of manifestation. Your attention moves, and as your attention moves, your world evokes you, and you evoke the world upon the world evoking you. That means most people don't speak unless they're spoken to. They stand in silence. Guys, I think I need to speak about this so the right impressions can be made. Here, I'll tell you this. There's, long story short, there's this undefeated imperial warrior in battle. Undefeated, undefeated, undefeated. And so, after his last battle, where he kills the last guy in the battlefield, then he wonders for the first time, where are all these people that I'm killing going? This is a Zen story from back in the day, guys. And the guy calls to someone and says, "Find me the wisest man in this land." And so suddenly they come up with some address or something, and the guy finds himself going on this imperial warrior with his like uniform and everything, going on this journey, and he finds himself at the door at the top of this mountain beyond the clouds, at the door of this monastery or whatever. And he goes into this monastery, into this temple, and he sees that the Zen master is kind of drinking tea. Zen tea ceremony. They're having a Zen tea ceremony. And so this guy just dives in. The way he enters, the door opens for him as if the door is even scared of him. This imperial warrior, he goes in and he looks at the sage and he says, "Sage, tell me now, what is heaven and hell?" As if like the sage is in the middle of a Zen tea ceremony. And the whole point of a Zen tea ceremony is that when you're doing that action, you're only doing that action. When you're drinking tea, you're just drinking tea. There is no other intrusion. Because there's no, the attention is content with where it's focused on. Anyways, the imperial warrior shouts this at the sage, and the sage takes a sip and looks at the imperial swordsman, imperial warrior, and says, "You are too much of a goon. You are too much of a fool, too much of an animal for me to tell you." That's it. And this warrior, he's been undefeated in battle, and nobody has spoken to him this way. And he feels it's like an attack upon his honor, upon his high ego. And so what he does is he gets his sword and he's about to kill the sage, as if his hand has already decided. In that utter rage, it's like suddenly as if things were going slow motion. The sage says, "This is the door to hell. This is hell." And the sword, even though gravity is assisting the hand of the samurai, the imperial warrior, but his hand stops. And his hand stops as if some part of him understood that it is the mind that sets the color of the room. The warrior drops his weapon and bows. And the sage looks at him and he says, "This is the door to heaven." And there's this intense silence. And the sage tells the person, "Get up and come and drink tea." And for the first time, this imperial warrior snapped out of an idea that he thought he had to be a statue of. Really, in this life, everything changes, And if you don't believe me, look at your own face. So the idea of this, that I honor religion, not because of how it should govern everything. I see religion as art. The same way I honor every idea, everything my eyes have passed by. Art that now belongs to the inner sky. And I'm telling you guys, the word And the archetype of the fallen angel, all angels are light beams of the same sun. All conception is present in a moment of attention. The yogi, the mystic, was done. It was like a human being that was done with the endless storification of this sculpture that's changing all the time. You know? That means it's as if time has not stopped. So how can space die? That means time actually is an honorable thing. You know, a lot of people say they don't have time. You know, it's like you don't have honor. You gotta let go of the need for language to endlessly try to fill that void that only your eyes staring at the unknown and becoming content with it can satisfy. No creature is perfect here. The Buddha said, know these three pearls. When you know this, then you've realized why compassion is necessary, because the species has to advance. Impermanence, incompleteness, imperfection. These are the three jewels from Buddhism. When you realize these in the quality of the nature of experience and you become content with this, I will be listening to your talks then. Yeah. Guys, there was this Zen master that said, I think it was Shunryu Suzuki. He said, just because there's a picture of a cake, that picture of a cake doesn't satisfy you. Just because you have an image or an impression doesn't mean that's the totality of life. The best analysis is that there's more unknown than known, so just walk with alertness in this realm, both in the inner realms and outer realms. So practice your alertness in the outer realms. This is a huge question, you know. What happens to thought beyond the senses? And Mr. Within will tell you it has two angles it can move. It can go towards the void or it can go towards the infinite. What if your mind was your gift? What if this intelligence, this DNA that is you, is your gift? And what if this gift, after you opened it for yourself, you saw that it was a gift also for your civilization, and you saw that the civilization was behind, and you saw the various battlefields every human being is fighting behind your eyes? You know, what do you do then? And the only way is you start letting the mind roar and the true nature to get stage time. You know, I don't walk around thinking that there's gods walking on clouds. I can conceive it, I can visualize, but I don't go moving around with too much thought. There is no there is no story. I like that. I kind of, believe it or not, um, The mind outgrew its endless suffering of constantly storifying itself. It was like, mind, stop telling yourself stories, please. The mind's like, sorry, I'm designed for this. Okay, so welcome everyone. Can I ask everybody who's participating in this live stream to share where in the world they're listening from? Just you can go city, country, or just country. You know, guys, I'm trying to think of sharing with you an experience I had with nature, in nature. And usually it's this timeless walk. It's like that's the thing that transcends time. One thing transcends time, guys, and that is the view of beauty. Because what it is, it's just space. It's space between phenomena. I mean, check this out. I'll tell you this cool thing. I remember reading this book by this savant named Daniel Talbot. And he said that his mind had opened up to how you can endlessly divide something to smaller, divide a line into smaller lines. And so he was kind of taking steps and trying to get to the halfway point, I believe, the halfway point of the, what do you call it? He was trying to walk towards the halfway point, or he wasn't trying to walk to the halfway point. He was trying to walk, he was measuring his steps as a kid walking home after school from one lamppost to another lamppost. And so it's endlessly divided into smaller steps, tinier steps, tinier steps. He could never reach it. Right now, the concept of infinity is leashed by mathematics. Okay, nice. People are. Okay, let me see this. We have people from California. I think every nice people from America maybe. So Australia. Sorry guys, I had to Guys, pretty much, I was okay. Here, let me try to share one last bit of information about that thing I was telling you. Pretty much, the idea was the thing is I can't remember it accurately. I think it was that he would try to go like half, like imagine you want to go 2 meters, so he would try to go like 1 meter, and then he would divide that distance by two, and then he would go another step, and he would divide it by two and go another step, smaller step. Eventually he wouldn't reach the end of the lamp once he realized. So that was the idea I was sharing. Guys, I don't know, that's the best of my ability. So guys, I guess I can end the talk here and I'll open it up to Q&A. Pretty much one last thing to say about it is that we have to wonder if we are evolving beyond thought. What would engage human activity to still the human nature of the body to stay? Do you know? That means it's like we have to prepare for a situation where what would it imply if all our minds were connected to the same computer, and then we have to prepare for a situation what if all our minds were naturally connected before we even made computers, you know? So there's various ways, I mean, reality can move, of course. So guys, I'm gonna open it up to Q&A for 10 minutes. Feel free to ask your question and I'll enter cyberspace to answer it. And thanks for listening. It's fun. Okay, guys. So Clinical Sword says, "Are you doing another lecture tonight, Mr. Within? And if so, around what time?" Honestly, man, I don't know when the vision for it arrives, really. But I think most likely, maybe in a few hours, probably. Okay, so Honk says, what forces pull us through space? We are in control of our own influences, or are we in control of what draws us? Um, you're asking the chicken or the egg, and I'm telling you it's both of them simultaneously. Guys, out of curiosity, would people be interested in me uh, putting a Discord for tonight? Just trying the Discord thing? I don't know, maybe we'll see. We'll see. So okay, Hunk. I'm gonna try to and try to see how far I can see into this question. What forces pull us through space? We are in control of our own influences, or are we in control of what draws us? Behind your eyes, you are in control of what you draw. In front of your eyes, nature draws you. So, guys, Discord. I wasn't familiar with it. People in the comments and in the chat kind of suggested it that uh, pretty much it's like everybody can speak. I would be able to hear people in the live streams' voices at that point. You know. Yeah, it's not. Yeah, guys, it's a website. Discord is just I don't know. Google Discord. Guys, here's a playful thing we can do. Sometimes we have a question of a day thing here in these episodes. So I'll say somebody in the chat section said they threw their computer off the fourth floor, so they can't access Discord. So and then I wrote, what were your computer's last words? You know, and Mr. Grateful in the chat section says thank you. But now I'm gonna open that question. If like your computer was dropped from the fourth floor, what would its last words be? That's the question of the day, guys. I'm trying to think what my answer to the question of the day would be. I think my computer would say very benevolently, access granted. And then I would not let it go. That's the way I would answer the question every day. So I'll write it for people. Okay. So I want to thank everybody for listening. I'm going to end the talk here. But wander beyond your sight and share your findings with the only world that can receive them. All right. Thanks, guys. Blessings.